What are the best practices for cloud computing? Welcome to Tea at Taxevity, where you get insights from insiders who make life better, our many clients and friends. I'm Pramod Sharma, the actuary at the Taxevity Insurance Advisory, and when I'm not doing interviews, I'm helping people transfer risks with life and health insurance. Our guest today is Keith Beckles. Welcome, Keith.
Thanks for having me, Pramod.
Now, Keith, what do you do when you're not being interviewed?
When I'm not being interviewed, I provide cloud computing services mostly for the financial industry.
Okay, and that's great because we are talking about cloud computing.
Absolutely.
First question, what is cloud computing?
Cloud computing is a catch-all phrase that covers anything to do with computing that doesn't occur on your machine. If you use Google Maps, that's cloud computing. If you use Hotmail, that's cloud computing. People are familiar with things like Dropbox or the Amazon.com cloud where you can purchase things or even store your data. All that's cloud computing. That's a public cloud computing.
Okay, and is it fair to say that virtually everyone is using cloud computing, whether they're thinking about it or not?
Absolutely. I think everyone today uses cloud computing to some extent.
Okay, and are there best practices for using cloud computing?
Absolutely, there are best practices, usually based around the industry that you work in.
What are the best practices for cloud computing?
The best practices for cloud computing are centered around security, compliance, and data retention.
Okay, let's explore each of those in more detail. When you talk about security, what are you referring to there?
I'm talking about, the physical security of the data that you have for your client. If you have your client's personal information, you're responsible in your industry to make sure that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Whether that's by losing your notebook if you have information there, or having it, sending a search or an email to someone that's not supposed to get it, or just through any practice through negligence. Our cloud computing solutions allow you to hang on to your client data without the possibility of it falling into the wrong hands.
Because I've heard of situations where computers are lost, say from hospitals or places, and it seems that the records are easy to read. I thought they'd all be encrypted. Wouldn't that be enough?
You would think it would be enough, but most encryption algorithms today can be broken by a determined hacker. So if you have, for instance, your client records for, say, 2 or 3 of your clients on a machine, and it's got a 128-bit encryption. If somebody really wanted to get into that, they could get that information.
Okay, so when you talk about the physical protection of equipment, what are you talking about there? Like locking your doors or putting passwords on your computer?
All of those things are better than nothing. But the best way to protect your information, in our opinion, is to have it in a private cloud.
Okay, and we'll talk more about private and public clouds so that we can understand the differences
Absolutely.
between them. Okay, so that's one of the points that you said is a best practice, security. Another one was compliance. What do you mean by that?
Well, each governing body of different industries are becoming stricter and stricter around compliance and whatever their rules are that run their business. What our idea is that its best practice is to stick to those rules as closely as possible.
Okay, sticking to the rules sounds like a good idea. Now, if the rule says that I should make 2 copies of a document, would your recommendation be that I just make 2, or would you suggest I make more?
Our recommendation would be that you would make 3.
Okay.
The better it is, the closer you stick to the rules and go above them, the better it is for everyone concerned, and especially you, the user or the advisor.
We're both in the financial sector, and there are rules there. Can you give us an example of some of the things we should be worried about?
Confidentiality is a great worry, and it's something that regulations are bringing to the forefront. You are, as an advisor, are responsible for your client's confidentiality. If you have your client's information in a position to be taken or lost or just fall into nefarious hands, then you're by definition out of compliance. We have solutions that allow you to do your work and carry on your business without having to worry about your data falling into the wrong hands.
Okay, confidentiality sounds like a very important item. What about things like business rules?
Business rules can be built into processes and documentation that allow the advisor to again carry out his business but stay within the rules and the regulations of the overseers, or whoever they may be.
We've talked about two best practices. Right. The first was security, the second was compliance, and the third one I think you mentioned was data retention.
Data retention. Cloud computing allows data to be retained off-site, safely, securely, fully compliant, and indefinitely.
What's wrong with doing backups physically in your office? Because that's a lot faster. It's
a lot faster, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I encourage you to do a backup physically, as on a regular basis, weekly, monthly, daily, whatever works best for you. But accidents happen. There are fires. There's theft. Many reasons. For any reason, things can happen where you lose your data. So keeping it off-site on the cloud allows you to always have a copy.
Okay. There are two types of clouds from what I understand. There's a public cloud and a private cloud. So what is this public cloud?
Public cloud is anything that you're used to seeing. Like Dropbox we're familiar with. Okay. We talked about Hotmail. We talked about Google Drive. All of those are public clouds. Those are a cloud-based solution where anyone has access to it.
But when I think of those things, you've got these really large companies that are backing them. They would care about security also. Isn't that good enough?
It's good enough for the public, but as a business person, you have a higher level of responsibility for the client's data and just for your own security and data integrity. So a public cloud is not the best practice as far as we're concerned.
Okay, and then there's the private cloud. Mm-hmm. Would you please describe that?
A private cloud, it would be a cloud that only you have access to. We would set up an environment by which you would have access. If your business has other people that require access, they would have access to it as well. But everything works exactly the same as a public cloud, but no one else has access except you.
When I think of a public cloud, they'd have all sorts of computers and backups and redundancy, etc. Mm-hmm. Would a private cloud offer those same capabilities?
Absolutely. The exact same capabilities, even sometimes to a higher extent. Higher level of securities, higher levels of redundancy, but only for you.
Okay. Are there any drawbacks to using a private cloud?
The main drawback, for the regular user would be the cost. The cost is probably 2 to 3 times higher for a private environment than it would be for public.
Okay, right. And are there requirements right now that people use private clouds?
There are requirements in some industries, and their requirements are becoming more strictly enforced in other industries.
Okay, so the trend is towards more use of private clouds, it would seem.
It would seem that way for business.
Will the prices of private clouds drop over time, do you think?
Absolutely. The prices of all computing environments tend to go down. But while the price for data retention and data storage will come down, everyone knows that their data just gets bigger and bigger. So what we're looking at is a leveling out as opposed to a sharp spike in the overall cost.
Right, and maybe I have lots and lots of photos. Maybe those can go on a public cloud. They don't need to be a private storage.
Or maybe they can just go in your backup and you can put them in a fireproof safe. But business documents and business requirements should be backed up off-site regularly and in a private environment.
What's your key takeaway for our audience today?
The key takeaway for me is that the rules around compliance, security, and data retention are changing. They're becoming stricter and stricter, and you better stay ahead of the curve. That's the best practice for business.
That makes a lot of sense. What's the best way for people to reach you?
You can reach me at my company, Ames Innovations, or they can find me through Promote's podcast.
Thanks for dropping by, Keith.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us for Tea at Taxevity. The Taxevity Insurance Advisory helps you understand insurance and bridges gaps in your coverage. There's no premium for peace of mind. How healthy is your insurance?